Hey guys, how you doing? This is Ken Susi here with Fishman Live. And as I said before, we're all dealing with our own ways to avoid this current pandemic. And now that we're finally seeing how it's affecting the music industry, it's also affected business and everyone's lives. So socially and business-wise, we now have a health crisis and an economic crisis at the same time. But please remember to adhere to your regulations in your state. Now, with that being said, every day we've been doing some online clinics and online interviews. And today we have Mr. Tosin Abasi with us. And Tosin, you are
What's up?
finally on. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm living the dream over here in Boston, Massachusetts. What about you? How are you
Awesome.
holding up?
I'm in sunny California in Los Angeles. It's surreal because you aren't really supposed to go
So it's
outside.
like a pandemic with a
But
view, right, over there?
low key, it's like sunny most days and like really, really like the temperature is like perfect, but it's all contrasting this sort of ambient fear that's gripping the country.
Now, so I guess, just for everybody out there that's watching this feed, we're not here as Fishmen to sit here and sell you on our gear, sell you on our product. Obviously, it's a time and place, but what we're trying to do is we've already talked to Ryan Bruce and Jen Majira and Keith Merrow, just all these great artists, and we just want to see what they're checking in on them, seeing if they're healthy, seeing what they're doing with their lives, talking about their lives and their families and whatever it is that we want to discuss. This is kind of a free form conversation. And if you choose that you want to ask Tosin Abasi or myself a question while we're going for it, please do. We're looking at a live feed now. Tosin can't see them, but I'll be kind of reading them out. People are already excited that you have an 8 string in your hand, so that's pretty cool. Um,
Oh, really?
what is that? What are you holding right now? Let's sell somebody on something.
This is an Abasi Concepts Lorata 8 string. This is one I built right before the pandemic situation. I was about to leave for tour, and I decided to have another tour guitar finished. This is the first time we've done this color. It's kind of a champagne, sort of pale gold color, and we actually painted the neck. So the neck and back and sides, normally we have unpainted necks, but this one we tried it, and it feels great. It's like a matte satin sort of finish all over the guitar, except for the bells. And yeah, I've just been getting to know it a bit better.
So is this like your first time holding that thing, or have you had it for a little while?
I've had it for like 2 weeks or something.
So I feel like during this whole like pandemic, there's certain guys out there that I worry about that they're going to go absolutely crazy. But then there's like guys like you. I know that you're very social. I know you like to go out, and do your thing, but you're also one of those guys who loves to play guitar. So I'm assuming you have way more time on your hands, and it's good time for you because you get to practice. Because I know you love practicing too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of a lot of phenomenal guitar players are kind of existing primarily online at this point, where it's like everyone's practicing and everyone's like, for the dudes who do like the practices, is kind of like a I don't know. This situation lends itself to sitting down with the instrument and really digging into stuff that you've been wanting to spend time on or
Yeah.
whatever.
There's been
So
like I've seen the guitar player, what's his last name? Falconer from Judas Priest. I think he played for like 2 hours online without saying a word. Just on, I believe he was on his story on Instagram, just sitting there playing, looking at the screen. I knew it was dark. I'm sorry, it was late when he started playing, and then when I checked in later, it was still dark out, and he was still playing, not saying anything.
that's crazy.
But they were just straight up like riff into solo part into riff into solo part, like it was like a set list that he had in his brain. It's kind of cool.
That is cool. It's cool getting a window into. I think there are people like streaming and posting their practice routines or whatever that normally were a bit more, a little less public with that stuff. But now, when all you can do to connect with other people is to go online. It's really giving us a window into everyone's practice room and what everyone's working on, and it's actually kind of
Yeah.
cool.
What? So people are probably gonna wonder what kind of licks are you working on right now? What's your what do you got going on? What have you been practicing? I'm gonna fix my camera while you do this.
Um, I've been actually trying to practice a lot of like rudimentary stuff with the major
Yeah.
scale. I mean, everyone obviously knows like. Can you hear that all right?
Yeah, it's a little low, but it's fine. You don't have to crank. It's fine. We can hear it.
Is
Yeah.
that better? So I'm trying to like just work on intervallic playing. Like I was just doing, six, or doing stuff where there's this guy, Risto.
I'm sorry.
He has a lot
What
of
was his name again? I'm sorry. You cut out for
etudes
1 second.
for Hristovic. I think he's Ukrainian. Hristov.
Yeah.
Vitchev. But he's got some cool chord scales and certain intervallic approaches to guitar. Like you can do stuff like where, so I'm kind of like using the major scale, but I'm holding one note and then trying to gain independence between the other fingers, stuff like that. Or trying to work on some counterpoint. It's all based right now. I'm just doing major scale stuff, but trying to work on treating the scale as more than one note at a time. So with counterpoint, you can ascend and descend the scale at the same time. Like, um, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to kind of it's really tricky and I suck at it right now, but I figure I have a lot of time to continue practicing it. And then I'm trying to maybe work on more of the selective picking stuff I was doing, where um, it's kind of like a way to produce notes where you kind of disconnect your left and right hand, like you hammer on. Hold on a second. Let me turn this delay off. So basically, I don't know if you can see this, but like I'm hammering on the first note of a note grouping and then completing the number of notes I want with the right hand. So if I wanted 3 notes, it'd be like one as a hammer on, 2 and 3 as a down and up stroke. So you got this sort of, and you can do a lot of interesting combination. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like maybe going to be combined with the major scale stuff to have a bunch of exercises that I might put into like an instructional pack or something like that. So you kind of get a method to how to learn this technique and apply it to music and stuff like that.
Are you guys currently? I mean, that's a sick riff, but are you guys currently writing for another record? Because I mean, it's been a while, right?
It's been a while. We were in the middle of recording and then pandemic, and now we can't be in the same room with each other apparently.
Yeah, unless if you guys all like slept in the studio and just quarantined in there for like a month.
That actually, yeah, you're right. If we like confirmed that we didn't make any contact with anyone who had it, and then we all got in the same room, and then we didn't leave that room until we were done, that could be one way of preventing giving each other the plague or whatever. But no, we're like we're halfway done. We were really like just basically going to do another 3 or 4 tracks, I think, and then everything got shut down.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So this has really affected you guys. I mean, are you? So I guess the question is are you gonna have to pay for the studio time that you're missing, and are you gonna be bumped for another band when this whole thing's over?
Are we going to be? What's the
Oh,
last part?
are
Are
you
we
gonna
going to
be
be what
bumped
when
for
it's over?
another band? Because you know how studios are. They're all people put deposits down on the studio. So how's that gonna work?
We weren't. We weren't really doing it in a studio per se. We were going to Misha Mansour's house, um, his home studio, and he doesn't really do he's not really doing commercial recording for other bands, so we're not going to lose our slot. But he's a longtime collaborator and good friend, and he was we were doing a number of demos with him, and obviously, yeah, all of that got cut
Okay,
short.
that makes
But
things easy because sometimes when you're in a bigger studio, your drums are set up. You know, you've got guitars mic'd in a in the room perfectly. You never know if like you know I don't know Slaughter's gonna get back together and then probably take your space in the room. You know.
yeah, Honor's gonna fucking call and be like, "Yo, we want that
Yeah,
studio,
we're gonna
and we'll be
ruin your
booted."
record with a couple breakdowns. but but no, so yeah, someone was asking about new music. Another person's right here asking, what is the major difference from your signature set to Javier's signature set?
Um, I have not actually sat down and had a chance to play Javier's set at length, but I think he went for. So my set is voiced very specifically to certain tones that I need, like the slap split call sound, and um, just the range of the pickup. I wanted something that sounded hyper clean, so it kind of extends into that almost piezo territory if you wanted to. Javier's set is, I don't think, as he didn't go for the same things. I know, for instance, the output of his pickups is lower. I went kind of for like a hotter pickup. I just like that sort of full signal, without sacrificing dynamics. There's something about when the guitar is just super clear and direct sounding. Like I actually referenced the output of the Moderns as like kind of a benchmark for mine, but I didn't want it. I wanted to have some tones that the Moderns didn't
Yeah.
get. But if you're wondering, some of the differences, one would be output, two would be just the range of the pickup. Like I said, mine goes into just that sort of new string character. It really kind of definitely reaches for that. I know with Javier's pickups, his voice too, I believe, is almost made to sound like a jazz, like flat wound, guitar string, really sort of warm and sort of lower output and open sounding. It's really cool. It's like a night and day difference between position 1 and 2,
Nice.
or voice 1 and voice 2.
Yeah. Well, guess who just
And then,
yeah. Go on.
yeah, go
No, I was
ahead.
gonna say we just had another celeb jump onto this page. Mr. Thomas McRockland said the dudes, so he's excited to be watching this right now.
What's up, Thomas? Hope you're staying safe over there.
But what were we gonna say about your pickup? So was that the last point you were gonna say?
Um, I think that's primarily it. It would be output, the actual voicing of the pickup is dramatically different. I mean, Javier's are great. I think he wanted to make something that would appeal to a wide range of guitar players, and so it avoids being super pronounced. I think in a lot of ways because it wants to capture a lot of people who might have different uses for it. My pickups are versatile as well, but they definitely go in that sort of that territory of like super spanky and great for cleans, not in like an old school sort of passive pickup way, but in this sort of like hyper real. Yeah, I don't know. There isn't like, it's almost like you took a Telecaster and you like juiced it up a little bit in some of the settings,
So I think someone said it at
and
a
then
clinic.
you got all
I
the.
think someone said at a clinic it's like a high performance guitar. You're a high performance guitar player with high performance sounds.
high performance guitar. But yeah,
That was awesome. But yeah,
yeah,
your split coil sounds are very jacked up in a really cool way because it's very very clean. You could hear the string. It's perfect. It's great sounding.
thanks.
But so with that being said, how you? I mean, obviously you just launched a guitar company just a few years ago. At this point, how is this whole pandemic, been going with that? I mean, obviously there's going to be a stop on your guitars being shipped or built. How are you guys dealing with that? Or are you guys still making stuff?
Yeah, it's all happening in real time. We have production in Korea that is on track because Korea somehow did not get completely overburdened with this thing. I think they got ahead of the curve and they were able to test so many people so quickly that it didn't require them shutting down their economy. Um, so production in Korea is on track, and so we'll have a bunch of inventory for I think late May or June,
Yep.
which is our introduction of our world music series, where it's like kind of a more a price point that sits below the American made stuff. So that's really exciting because I think it's a chance for a lot of people to afford a guitar if they were priced out
Yep.
before, and we're getting a lot of them made, so there isn't that risk of not getting a slot. So far the pandemic has not completely shut that down. Then we have Japan. We have some guitars being made in Japan as well, and they've been dealing with COVID since what is it, November or December of last year. So both those countries are basically emerging from this sort of state of emergency
Yeah.
thing. So more of the story is they're working. So we're going to have our Japanese stuff as well. The issue is the U.S., where we are obviously just dealing with this in real time, and we have obviously this is a USA made guitar, and it's kind of a day by day reality. I think our paint guy is no longer able to go in because he's in California,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of that's a bummer. So there's going to be a stall on some of the U.S. guitars, um, but hopefully this doesn't last for I don't know half a year or something. So that would be like pretty crippling. But yeah, I think like other small businesses, we're kind of all watching in real time to get a handle on how long it's going to be before we can return to business as usual.
Yeah, there's a lot of people obviously in the music business being affected by this, and I mean, luckily but not luckily, you guys were in the studio creating a record, and you didn't have any tours booked, you didn't have to worry about paying your techs and stuff and canceling a tour. Did you have anything set up after this tour? Sorry, after the recording session that you had to cancel?
Dude, we had a tour that got canceled the day it was meant to start.
Oh,
This was
really?
like, yeah, we were going out with Vela Maya and Dance Gavin Dance and Issues. It was a big tour for us too. Like the LA show was already sold out in advance at the Palladium. Um, so we're the tour buses there. All the crew had flown in. We had 2 days of rehearsal. All the backline and the production and all the merch was ordered. All the bands are there in LA, and it's like the whole tour is canceled.
That's tough because I mean, listen, no musician is I guess how do I say it? Like at any level, even your level, being an analyst leaders, you're not impervious to this whole thing. You're not. You can't. You guys are going to suffer because of this. Like ticket sales, income, all that stuff, returns. I mean, how's it been going with that? I mean, are you guys going to try to rebook this once this whole thing is over, or are you guys just kind of shut it down for a little while and go back in the studio?
They actually have. We just announced the new dates. I believe it's for August. So if you go to Animals as Leaders, our Instagram, the tour is announced there. And I'm sure Dance Gavin Dance has the same thing on their site. So what a lot of bands are doing is postponing their canceled tours to a point in the like near future. Um, so instead of canceling completely. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And is there, well, luckily, well, there's been some other bands too that have dealt with this. I believe one of them that's notable is Devin Townsend. He was on tour in the middle of a huge tour for himself, and I think he started a GoFundMe for his techs because they were losing income. Obviously, he couldn't pay them for their time because the tour got shut down. Are there any other bands that you heard of that are experiencing that kind of stuff, or is there any like GoFundMe's that you know about that are good for your fan base to kind of subscribe to and donate?
Uh, I saw I saw Devon's, but I haven't seen other ones, and you know, it's just a tough ask because there are people in this country who may lose jobs because either they work for a business that won't be a business after this shutdown is over, or they may have a job, but in between now and returning to work, they've got to stretch money they didn't have. They've got to make it work with this like completely random, pause on income. It's completely so. I think in some ways, a lot of the people in this country need GoFundMe's as on top on top of being the ones who pay into GoFundMe's, and so it's just a tricky situation. I think um, the scope of this thing on the entertainment industry is beyond bands and crew. It's bus drivers. It's backline companies. It's freaking I mean, it's the venues themselves. Merch companies might be dealing with a ton of unpaid, balances to big amounts of inventory that no longer have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Um, Managers in commissions. I mean, it's kind of like the through line goes pretty deep. So
Yeah,
um,
I was talking about this yesterday with Keith Merrow. It's difficult for the music industry because you got guys that are just solely reliant on the bands being out and working, including the bands themselves. So it's really hard to pay someone's bills or pay your tax or pay your merch company, or the merch company creates all this merch for you and can't ship it, or you have nothing to do with it. So it's a really hard catch 22 for everybody because everyone's ready and able to work and do this, but no one wants to get sick. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, like for instance, we had all this merch made with the tour dates on the back of the shirt, like these tour shirts, but those dates we did not actually go and perform on those dates. So it's like this anomalous tour shirt that never happened, low key, which is kind of cool, but also like an example of how this thing is like in a lot of detailed ways impacting people.
yeah, yeah, that's crazy. Well, I'm sure people are pretty. Your fans are sympathetic to the point where actually, I bet if you offered them up online, people would still buy them now, just for the fact of having the dates during this crisis. It's like I got the tour shirt from the COVID-19 pandemic time period.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's like a collector's item.
so so yeah, that's cool. You guys will go back out in August. Is there any other bands that you know of that had to cancel tours?
Um, yeah, saves the day. Obviously, Devin Townsend. Um, I think Frank and Bali had a bunch of dates. Josh Smith had to cancel dates. Um, I mean, dude, it's because it isn't just the tours that were meant to be going on right now. It's the ones that are like in the near future that obviously the uncertainty doesn't allow them to commit to it. So
Yeah,
the list of canceled shows is long. I mean, there's also festivals like Coachella and South by Southwest, and
yeah.
you know what I mean, like
Oh yeah, I think
huge.
Download Festival got completely canceled.
Download got canceled, I believe, in Australia. They were having, was it Download in Australia?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it was Australia or England, but either way, that's a big deal.
Damn. Yeah, I don't know about the one in England, but I know in Australia, I think they were doing Download this year. Like Pliny was meant to play on it, and um, you know, bands started pulling out before they officially canceled it, and they officially canceled it, and it just, I think Deftones was on it as well, and they saw that like My Chemical Romance pulled out, so then they pulled out, and yeah.
That's tough. That's really tough. There's actually I was just out with my band Unearth in Europe, and we left I can't remember. I think we left on the 13th of last month, and we did it just a 2 week tour. But Testament showed up a week after us, and they started doing a run. And I remember saying like, I was questioning whether or not to even go myself with my band, but they yeah, like a week into our tour, they show up to Europe, they start playing shows. We ended up leaving at a time where it was kind of risky to still even fly home, and they were still out playing gigs. And sure enough, unfortunately, Chuck Billy and his wife unfortunately have the COVID-19 virus. So they're I don't know if they were hospitalized, but that's a huge hit for a band like that, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, Chuck's the vocalist, right?
Chuck's the vocalist. His wife always tours with the band, and whatever. I thought it was kind of weird that they were still staying there and playing, but maybe they were just gonna muscle through it. Who knows? And then they got sent home by the government, and they made it back. And sure enough, they got tested. And a couple of the guys are sick, but mainly him and his wife.
That's terrible. The thing is you have these tough decisions to make where you've booked an international tour and you're in the middle of it, and do you take this preemptive caution to say, well, there's a risk of this thing, so let's cancel everything, or do you take that risk because of the incentive you have of all the overhead and the money you need from completing the tour and all the people involved in the tour relying on that income. So it's an unfortunate decision to have made, and I think there are a lot of small business owners who don't even have the option to stop, or people who are working at grocery stores, or it's just like, in the face of catching this disease, you're forced to make this choice about your livelihood.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is how, I guess at the time where you were on tour, it was still like, which way is this going? Is this like insanely dangerous and serious, or is this overblown?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misinformation that was speaking to this being overblown or a hoax, or only was, a risk for old people or any of these things. And like, we didn't have a clear, unified message on this. And so I think bands who are on the road had to make a hard choice. And depending on how you looked at it, you felt like, we got this, fuck it, we'll be okay. Or, let's not take this risk, everyone stop. And
Well, a fun little story is that we had a tour where our original drummer basically quit the band on the road. So somewhere like in the first week of the tour. Then we found another drummer to meet us in like somewhere in Arizona, and we ended up rehearsing with him, and we only could like put together like 4 or 5 songs. We're on tour with Shadows Fall. That drummer, we made it up to about like the northwest of Canada, and we're trying to cross into the border to play shows. He ended up getting arrested at the border, so then we were down 2 drummers. Then I think it was Cattle Decapitation and who else? Shadows Fall. Oh, Shai Halud. Those bands. Their drummers were like, you guys are already through 2 drummers. The 2 drummers were like, we'll learn a couple songs each. A war broke out. It was during the Bush administration. Like somewhere around that time. There was talks of like nuclear weapons hitting whatever California. Anyway, so we're down 2 drummers, and we all started getting sick. Then the SARS pandemic kind of popped up, and we were supposed to play Toronto 2 days later. So here we are with no drummer, traveling across Canada from the west to the east coast, and we played Toronto to like, I don't know, 800 people when we were all deathly ill, and SARS just broke out there. So for us, we were like, we've been through worse. Like we'll go to Europe, we'll do this, and sure enough, we do a few shows. All of us are. I mean, we're very safe. We're washing our hands, staying away from people. We didn't do any meet and greets. And sure enough, we get to what was it, Milan. And the day we were in Milan, they shut down a couple of the towns around Milan because the COVID-19 pandemic kind of like hit there, and it hit it hard, and they started quarantining people to their villages. And sure enough, we rode public transit, we rode the train, we went downtown Milan, went to the big Starbucks there. It was one of those things. So we were kind of spooked at that point where things started to happen. But then you're right, like, is it a farce? Because then you watch the TV and you see like, military guys with masks on with machine guns marching down Milan. And we were there that day, and we're saying none of this happened, right? We're like, we were there all day. I was there from like noon to like 8 o'clock. So before I played, so it's crazy. So then we finished the tour because we only had like 4 or 5 more shows left, but it was the right thing to do to leave when we did because our booking agent got actually contacted by the EU and the United States and saying that we were being tracked. Our tour was being tracked, and they said that we were in no danger because of where we were geographically during the time period of all this. But even though we were in Milan, we were still okay. And then they sent us home. So we got pretty lucky. But it was definitely one of those things like I came back home. I didn't go into work. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't sick. One of those things for about 3 weeks, and then finally all this stuff happened. So it's been a wild ride. You know.
Dude, I mean, yeah, you were right on the cusp of very, very dramatic change in Italy, unprecedented change. And yeah, that's, I think there are a lot of tours that were able to finish their tail end right before shit completely hit the fan. Um, so, but yeah, I'm glad you didn't actually catch it. You were kind of in like one of the epicenters of Loki.
I was there. I didn't touch anything, but my normal regimen in Europe. I don't know how you are over there, but like I'll wake up at 3 p.m. like 3 p.m. and I'll immediately like eat dinner and sound check. And because I'm like, I don't want to deal with the rest of the day. And then like I'll go play my show, I'll sightsee a little bit, play my show, and then basically sit in my bunk all night and watch YouTube videos and practice guitar till like 6 a.m. So I'm one of those guys. So I stay away from everybody, even my own band. I'm kind of in my bunk the whole time.
Uh, yeah, you've been doing it so long. You got your own,
Yeah.
like, I mean, for me, I'm still enamored with, especially in Europe, there's a lot of old architecture and a lot of old, I don't know, it's just as an American, our country doesn't have that same sort of, um, that the depth of that history. So like when I'm over there, I try to explore, and yeah, when I'm single, I explore other things. But like, but yeah, but it's cool. It's cool that your habits kind of insulated you from, you know. But I mean, being in a club with hundreds of people and it's humid and they're all
Breathing on you.
like sweating and breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty miraculous that you came out
Well, the one
unscathed.
thing I was spooked about is that I know you follow my photography Instagram, Ken Susi Photography, but I definitely am obsessed with the metro in Europe, like mainly Munich. I love just traveling. They have like these stations that are like the architecture is awesome, so you could just like sit there with a camera and take pictures for hours. So when I was in Berlin, when I was in Munich, when I was in Italy, I was just traveling the train constantly, and that was probably not the smartest thing to do because of this whole pandemic and you know what I mean, the disease, the virus like lives on surfaces. But at the time I was very careful, like I wasn't going to touch anything. I was just going to sit with my jacket, my camera, and not touch anything and trying to enter the train and leave the train. But someone could have spit, breathe on me or whatever the wrong way, but I ended up not getting sick, luckily.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I think those public use spaces like that, like you said, all the surfaces and all the things. I mean, unfortunately, they're predicting a really high contraction rate just because of how hard it is to interact with this thing, and it's super communicable. So, you know, everyone's doing the best they can with hygiene and distancing, and that's almost this seems to be all you can do. And luckily, you did a good enough job while
Yeah.
you're over there.
Well, I guess my next question is obviously you're into cars. You have an awesome sports car. I know your friends do. Misha, like Herman Lee. I was talking to Jen Majira. She was talking about her car. Do you? I know you're quarantining yourself, but are you just like hopping in your car for a drive anyway, just to kill time?
Dude, yeah, I mean, living in LA, we're near a lot of mountain ranges. Like, the Angeles National Forest has this Angeles Crest Highway that's just like miles and miles and miles of winding, like beautiful canyon roads. And it's kind of a cool destination for a lot of sport bikes and a lot of sports cars. And it's also removed from the city, which is nice. So it lends itself to the social distancing thing. There's also Malibu. There's a bunch of canyons throughout Malibu. So yeah, um, driving can be a perfect escape. It's a solitary thing. You're in your car. You don't have to interact with anyone. and you get to, go into nature and kind of just, it feels like sometimes when you're standing around in nature, it feels like everything's going to be okay. It's like you're in this landscape that's existed way longer than you, and there's a certain balance to like all the all the trees and wildlife and light, and yeah, it can be therapeutic. So that is definitely I know. Yeah, so I'm definitely doing
That's
that
awesome. Well,
to answer your question.
not everybody lives in California or LA. What is it that you're seeing? I mean, everyone sees what they see. I know a few people made jokes online that, going out for I've read somewhere going out for groceries is like making a run in the what's it what was that show? What's the one with all the zombies and stuff like that? That big show. I can't
Oh,
remember.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. They said it's like making a run at the Walking Dead and trying to avoid zombies because the streets are bare. There's nothing around. Like, what are you seeing on the streets of like LA? I know you live like right in the middle of LA, so
Yeah, LA has a pretty large homeless population, and unfortunately, a lot of them are mentally ill, like severely schizophrenic, or um. So the Walking Dead analogy is a little apt if you're in certain parts of downtown because Skid Row is like,
yeah.
it literally looks like you could use B-roll from Skid Row and The Walking Dead, and like no one would, no one would.
But they're
I
still in
don't
their
think.
like tent. They're still in their tents or walking the streets. That's kind of scary, right?
Well, yeah, it's like society, at least in in LA, we have this huge homeless population that these aren't productive members of society, and it's not always their fault. Some of them are severely mentally ill. Like they will be of no value to any company. They're not producing. They're not productive. They're like struggling to like stay alive because they are like severely mentally ill, and they're just languishing on the streets.
Yeah.
And I think that intersecting with this pandemic is causing us like it's gonna kind of beg a pretty the question of, do we just pretend that these people don't exist? Like they will be a public health liability to healthy people, and they also deserve dignity, and they deserve, you know, a, a life that has some degree of mitigated suffering. So, what happens when you have 60,000 homeless in the midst of a lockdown because of a communicable disease, and then you have this sustained population that lives outside and like didn't get the memo?
Yeah.
Some of them are completely, obviously there's drug abuse, but there's a lot of mentally ill where like they're like, I mean, bro, they're not there. It's
Yeah.
so I think that is going to be a layer to this thing that, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe it accelerates some sort of response because you've toured LA, you've played 1720, you played,
Yeah.
it's, 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 it's noteworthy how many homeless there are here.
Yeah.
And
It's scary to
it's
think.
always been,
Yeah, sorry. It's scary to think that like 60,000 people, right? If you think about it, if everyone is in lockdown in their house for 2 weeks and this whole pandemic would end in 17 days or whatever it is that everyone's throwing out, though those 60,000 people most likely be passing it from one person to another. It's going to take months, I mean, for that to go through 60,000 people.
yeah, I mean, it could, I mean, I'm totally speculating here, but I mean, it could totally undermine this whole approach to flattening the curve through social distancing. If you have this huge population of people in your city who they don't even have the ability to wash their hands, you know, like, and they're just out um, during this lockdown, they are not observing it. I think you have a potential of community spread within the homeless like population, which would perpetuate this disease existing. And it's also a terrible thing to have to experience if you have no home, no shelter, and there's a freaking pandemic going on. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a tough situation, and I hope the local leadership figures it out. I think they are building some shelters, or they're repurposing hotels to house homeless people temporarily, I think. But this is uncharted territory, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think everyone's flying by the seat of their
I know
pants.
you and I are the same age, but we've never experienced anything like this in our lifetime, where we all had to stay in the house. And it's like being joking about this. It's like, maybe someone doesn't want to go to work, or no one wants to go to school, whatever it is in your head that is something that you're trying to avoid. You say to yourself like, "Oh, I wish I could just stay home today." But now you're in a position where you could stay home for 2 weeks, and like some people still can't. They're still effing that up. Like there's kids on college like spring break right now partying. They can't just stay home.
Bro, I mean, it's funny now, but like, I think the unfortunate reality of human psychology is that until you are staring risk or consequence in the face, you will have a range of responses. And I think for some people, the news reports are scary enough. And then for some people, they literally have to know someone who is on a respirator for them to take this seriously. And like I said, the misinformation is letting people cherry pick what they think is true. Like, oh, I'm 19, so it doesn't
Yep.
matter, or I don't live in Seattle or New York, so there hasn't been any cases in, wherever I live. But it's just
Yeah.
like, I just feel like some of the clips of the people partying at spring break are not going to age very well.
Well, the scary thing is that those kids, it's fine that they're out. They probably won't get sick, but if they do get sick, that's on them. But it's the people that they're in contact with, like their parents, their grandparents, people who they come home from spring break to, that are at the most risk, and that's dangerous for everybody.
Yo, but here's the thing: a large percentage of the cases, um, I think in Italy, not the deaths, but the cases, and in New York as well, are people like people under 40. A large percentage, like as high as 30%, I think I saw, or maybe
Yep.
higher, are getting COVID. Like you're not immune if you're young, and there are comorbidities like obesity. Like, do you vape all the time? Do you smoke weed all the time? Do you smoke cigarettes all the time? Like, those are consequential to your respiratory system, and that might put you in a different category, even though you're
Yep.
22. You know what I'm saying? I think the best thing is to listen to public health officials and take this thing. Dude, we shut down the freaking, like, they're like this, like you said, we've been alive a few decades, you and
A
I.
couple.
And this, and this is like for the government to literally just say, shutter all businesses and do not interact, and we'll figure it out. But the first thing you need to do is completely stop. Like that means that we are in the midst of like a serious threat. And I know if you live in Florida, it might not seem real, but like transmission is kind of like that. This thing has been proliferating in our country for a long ass time. Like
But
we don't have enough tests to confirm the amount of cases that
Well, it's funny
exist.
too because you've been to the Susi complex. My brother, my sister, my parents, we all live in the same cul-de-sac. And I was having a conversation with my father the other day, and it's like we're all quarantining ourselves, and my father was just kind of like, it doesn't seem that bad. I don't maybe we're overreacting. I'm like, it doesn't seem that bad because we're all been sitting in the house for like 2, 3 weeks at this point. You don't know anything else. You don't know any different. Like, do not go out. Do not interact with people. Be safe.
Yes, and the seeming this bad is it's like the thing is there's an incubation period of like close to 2 weeks, right? Then there are some people who are asymptomatic, so they're spreading the disease, but they don't have symptoms, right? And then the people they spread it to might not even realize for another 2 weeks that they have COVID, and then they're spreading it to X amount of people,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a percentage of those people who catch it where this thing will literally kill them. They will drown to death in their own inflamed lungs and fluid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Like, yeah, and so if your dad's like, oh, it seems normal, it's like, yeah, because it's like there's a level of there's a time lag, and transmission is invisible. It's not like everyone's walking around bleeding from the eyes with an Ebola and dead within four
Yeah.
days. It's a different dynamic, but I think we have enough reality being streamed in from Italy and
Yeah.
Spain and Iran. I just saw this thing in New York. There's a hospital that had to bring in a refrigerated truck because the amount of people who died overnight or whatever, like they needed emergency ways of storing dead bodies. So they have a box truck that normally would be going to like a grocery store or something. It's full of
That's
dead bodies.
unbelievable.
This is in New York.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Oh God, these are scary times. Um,
You're a hockey player. They're using an ice rink, I think, in Italy as a makeshift morgue
no,
to house dead bodies.
that
Yes,
would probably do it too because the ice. I mean, it's cold in a hockey rink. The ice is obviously solid. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Yeah, I was a little bit worried when I came home from tour, but maybe possibly being sick, and I played hockey a couple times. When I was at the 2 week, I was already icky, I was already kind of like at home for 2 weeks, and I said, I'm fine. But it's funny, like it's funny how easily germs can pass. I'm like playing hockey, playing soccer, going out. I mean, now I know you go to the gym all the time. I'm the same way. But what is it that you're doing for a workout regimen? I mean, are you confined to your house? Are you taking runs like in your neighborhood? Like, what do you feel is acceptable?
dude. I'm not going. Well, you can't go to the gym anymore. But yeah, like I'm basically, I'll do a run just to like get my heart rate up and breathe air. I've actually like not worked out since this lockdown has started, but I have a bunch of like weights. I have a pretty legit setup, and so I'm just gonna do um, my own thing and like the sort of like parking garage, like low key. Um, just it's gonna be important to be physically active during this, but yeah, you can't. You know, you're gonna have to work it out whether you're doing body weight stuff
Yeah.
or I don't know.
I
Yeah,
started revisiting all the to plug Sean T from remember the Insanity videos and P90X, all that stuff. Believe
yeah,
it or not, I'm kicking my own ass with that stuff because I'm more into I play soccer regularly, I play hockey regularly, so but and I have a treadmill, but a treadmill's just not enough sometimes to keep up with your cardio or get a full body workout, especially when I have limited weights here. But the Insanity discs, man, I'll send you some if you want to try them. They're like it'll kick your ass, and it's good to stay obviously fit while this whole period's going on. You can't move a lot, but you only need a confined space in order to do it.
yeah. Insanity. I remember when I was like really popular. I think the high intensity interval training thing is just a known way to increase metabolism and burn
Yeah.
fat and build muscle depending on the movements you're doing. So I think it's smart you're doing
I
that.
was watching this guy too. I was looking up prison workouts, like in like on YouTube, and there was this one guy who's like, do 25 burpees, but you're doing 25 sets, but you go like 25, then you do 24, then you do 23, 22. You know what I'm talking about? It's like you go all the way down to one. I couldn't do that many burpees. It was insane. It was like you're doing 200 and something burpees, and I was like, screw this prison workout. It's too it's too hard.
Yeah. That's when you have a lot of time on your hands. Yo, you could try 100 burpees for time.
I would probably die after about 70. Like, no,
You'd be surprised.
really?
You don't have to do it like unbroken, but the whole point is time yourself with the goal of doing 100 burpees, and over time it takes less time, but the movement is so dynamic that it's still effective. If you're on a treadmill going the same pace at about 60% of your output, over time your body actually burns less calories performing the same
True.
motion because it learns to conserve energy while performing that task. But something like a burpee doesn't allow you to be really
Yeah.
moderate.
Well, that's why I
Um,
like the insanity
but
disc
yeah,
because it's constantly doing burpees or that type of stuff. But with the treadmill, a important thing to do is interval training on the treadmill, where you put it up to 10 and then you do four for a minute, then you go 10, then four. You know what I mean? It's like interval sprints. But burpees will
yeah,
shred you if you could do that. I think that should be like an
yeah.
Instagram challenge, like the Tosin Abasi 100 burpee Instagram challenge. You know how people are like trying to do 10 push-ups and feel good about themselves? Let's start something real.
Um, bro, I'm not even ready for that challenge. I'm pretty. It's just like I haven't really been working out, so I need to work back into it before I challenge any.
Going on to our feed that people are asking questions. You got to at some point you got to write Thomas McRockland because he's basically your lawyer here. All he's doing is answering all the questions about like switchability for your pickups and what's the best combination. A lot of people are asking about your pickups and using them with push pulls. And he's like, no, you need the super 5-way switch, and you just can't do all that stuff with the push pull. He's really like He's digging in. It's great.
That's awesome. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, dude, I'm so glad that he's on board with Fishman too. Like, I think he's a killer player, and like obviously the fluent stuff is fantastic. But yeah, thanks, Thomas, for spreading the gospel and correcting some.
Some
Yes.
guys are asking, what's your favorite voicing? Also, there's a Jordan Johnstone said he's a huge fan of Earth. Thank you very much. What's your favorite voicing of your pickups?
It's the voice too. Like it's the two outer coils, I believe. It's just like super chimey, and it works for all the slap stuff and all the tapping, and it's probably the voicing that I use the most, low key. Yeah.
That's cool. We have NSPVST from Russia asking a question. Now, mind you, I'm going to ask this question, but I don't want to condone anybody to feel that EMG is a. We're not here to talk about compare and contrast EMGs versus Fishman. This is Tosin perspective. Obviously, EMG, Seymour Duncan, all those companies make great products, but this question is what is the difference between an EMG and a Fishman, and why should I buy Fishman?
Um, I mean, I think the technologies are completely different.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know on the technical level. I would say from a playing perspective, without disparaging EMG, I have not found them to be the most dynamic pickups, and I feel like depending on what you play, you could make them work. I think the Fluence. I think the Fluence kind of. I find them to be more versatile and more. There's just like a character to the Fluence that I have not heard in an EMG or a passive pickup before. There's this type of extreme evenness throughout the frequency range and an immediacy to the transient attack. And like I said, that flexibility to where you get multiple voices out of a pickup that feature alone, doesn't allow for an EMG to compete. But I think the guy asking should try a set of Fluence, and if he has the ability to try a similar guitar with EMGs in it, he can do his own testing, and that'll allow him to decide, what the differences are and what his preference is.
True. And another thing about Fishman is that obviously we say this all the time. I mean, we have two independent, sometimes three independent voicings that are completely different. It's not just like voice one is your tone and then voice two is a boost of that tone or something. In your case, I mean, why don't you talk about the voicings and how they react?
Yeah, so I didn't go super extreme in like the difference in the voices, but like, you know, it's like having more than one pickup. So in like a neck setting, I don't think you're gonna be able to hear this over the phone. Okay. But I guess you're basically not just buying a single pickup because there are two voices. And like you said, it's not nearly just a boost in dB or something like that. It's actually like a difference in response and EQ. And, we do a lot of these clinics and we try to show the examples, but I think for the discerning guitar player, getting your hands on a guitar with Fluence will allow you to feel the difference and to hear the difference in real time. And that's what sold me. You were calling me and you were telling me like Fishman's great, Fluence, you gotta try Fluence. But there's a level of like, yo, I've been playing guitar a long time. I know what I like. I'm not a lot of people aren't necessarily searching for something, especially if you play like say you're in a death metal band, like, you know, you might be fine with a high output humbucker in the bridge position, and that, for the most part, is kind of getting it done. But I actually think Fluence still does that better than but it could be a hard sell to someone who feels like, okay, well, I got my tone dialed and I'm not really
Yeah.
searching. So I think obviously I love them, and a lot of the artists who are using them like swear by them. And I think for anyone who's unsure, unfortunately, it's at the point where you have to get your hands on a Fishman equipped guitar, like a Fluence equipped guitar, and just sit down and play, preferably in a rig that you know from as a reference,
Yeah.
and like you will hear these detailed differences that are like, wow, this is cool. I have not experienced this before, and I think that's the best answer. And like, so homie who's asking, put your efforts into finding a Fluence equipped guitar and sitting down with it.
Yeah, it's really funny. I was having this conversation with Keith Merrow yesterday about this. It's like he and I both experienced kind of the same thing. Like you get to a point where you tried so many passive pickups out or so many active pickups out, and then you find the pickup you like, and then you say to yourself, like, all right, cool, this is great for what it is. But the second I put that pickup in another guitar, it sounds completely different. Like say the manufacturer can't reproduce a pickup that sounds identical to the pickup that you had in your guitar. So it's actually funny because I was at NAMM, and I think you could see behind me, I have a lot of some gear behind me, but I was trying out this new Synergy stuff, which they were nice enough to send me. And I remember there was a couple guitars at the Synergy booth, and I couldn't listen to the amp without having Fluence in my guitar because I just knew that those pickups sounded so different from guitar to guitar that I ran over to the Aristides booth, which was pretty close to it. And I was like, Pascal, let me borrow a guitar for like 10 minutes. And sure enough, he hands me one. I ran over and I finally listened to the guitar for I listened to Synergy for the first time, but it was exactly like, it was a good, like kind of like starting point. And then I could start tweaking the amp, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You can trust that Fluence pickup is consistent with what it's supposed to be voiced as versus like a good version of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think for me, all of my guitars have my set in them. Like it just does what I need like so perfectly. Like it's great.
Before I let you go too, I gotta comment. I'm so excited that you actually made use of those the Tosin signature series pickups hanging on the wall there in that green, fluorescent green. Show that to the room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You gotta show that to the room. It's awesome.
All right, let me see. I haven't actually. That guitar isn't fully.
Oh, don't play it. Just hold it up.
But, I mean,
that's so sick.
It's kind of a cool Nintendo sort of vibe, right?
It's amazing. So Stephen Carpenter asked for those, and then I just made them for you just because I knew you'd want them.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it actually kind of works pretty cool with the gray. So I might assemble that guitar and what are the comments? Are people into it?
People at the beginning of this feed were commenting on it and behind. They definitely recognized it. And being the product manager and artist relations guy, I can say maybe there might be a situation where we may have some more colors down the line. It'd be pretty cool.
I think that'd be cool. They look good in colors. Yeah.
Yeah, because now we get the open core stuff. We have your signature stuff. You have all the modern line and stuff. People like variation. But
totally.
Hey, listen, man, this has been really cool. I got you for about an hour. I really appreciate you jumping on with us. It means a lot to us to talk about your being candid with your life and what you're experiencing during this time. So it's really cool that you're able to jump on this live stream and just say hi to everybody and support Fishman per usual. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Love you guys. Love you, Ken. And just, wash your hands. Don't touch your face. And stay inside.
All right, guys. This concludes our interview / clinic with Tosin Abasi. Please, on Monday at 3 p.m., we have Mr. Devin Townsend joining us. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you very much, guys. Hold on one sec, Tos. And...